let me just quick pull up my presentation and we will get going. Welcome to the warm and friendly Westwood Village Rotary Club. Today is Thursday, March 18th, 2021, and this meeting is now called to order. And here is our agenda today, which should be interesting and fun. We're going to need to be a little bit flexible because, as Tom shared with me a little while ago, our speaker is in Napa without an internet connection, but he is hopefully calling in, which should work just fine for the kind of talk that he's doing. So we will play it a little bit by ear, and when we get to that point. And Tom, let me know if he needs any help from us. He has the call-in information on the invitation.
Right.
So I see that Bonnie is here. Bonnie is his guest, right?
Right. You can include her.
Okay. I have asked Richard to lead us in the pledge.
That will be my pleasure. If you place your hand over your heart, repeat after me. I pledge allegiance
to the
To
flag
the flag
of
of
the
the
United
United
States
of America,
to the
to the
republic
republic
for
to
which
which
the
it stands,
Republic,
Which stand
one nation,
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with
liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
And I'm going to do the thought for the day, which, in keeping with our Irish theme, is an Irish blessing. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, the rains fall soft upon your fields. Until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand.
Very nice.
Thank you. And our songmeister has an Irish song for us today. Ed?
That's it.
Ed, are you there? Can you hear me? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, that's why.
When Irish eyes.
Ed?
Why does it keep, okay, here it is. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, anybody can join me if they want. When Irish eyes smiling, short is like a morning in spring. In the lilt of Irish laughter, you can hear the angels sing. When Irish hearts are happy, all the world seems bright and gay. And when Irish eyes are smiling, sure they steal your heart away. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
And it looks like we have our speaker with us. Is that you, Tom? You're on mute. Let's see. You're on
Okay.
mute, so we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear Tom. I can hear Tom Barron, but am I seeing Tom Pickering?
I don't see him on the list.
Yeah, Bon is trying to talk, but
It's
you're
Bon.
you're
It
muted.
says
There you
Bon.
go.
Am I being unmuted
That's
now?
Bonnie's husband. Richard, is it
Yes.
Richard Bednar?
So can you hear me now?
Yes.
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 Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm Bon Pipkin. Uh, and I'm a friend of Tom Pickering's,
Got it. Okay.
and apparently Tom is still trying to join.
Okay. I understand he might be calling in. That's fine. Welcome.
Thank you.
And
Bon, should I try calling Tom? See,
perfect.
You know what? You can. I can call him. I've got his number on my speed dial here, so let me try to do that.
okay.
Okay, that's fine. So we'll welcome our, our guests. So you've just met Bon
Hi, everyone.
Pipkin, and we're happy to have you with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And we have Tam Bailey back with us, who rumor has it she might come back. We're thrilled to see you, and you look wonderful. So welcome, welcome. And somebody called Federated Women is signing in. We'll find out who that is.
Oh, that's probably Tom.
And I also want to welcome Jeff
I'm in.
Ebenstein,
They're waiting for
who
Tom to
was-
join. Are you
who
joining
had
through,
joined us last week.
through Federated Women? it
And
looks like.
Welcome, thrilled to see
Nancy,
you
could you
back.
hold on
Yes,
just for a second?
yes.
I will tell them that you're joining right now. Okay.
I think Bon is talking to Tom, so.
So Tom, Federated Women, is Tom joining in? Apparently he's having.
Wonderful. Welcome. Welcome. We're very happy that you could make it, Tom. And we will come back to you momentarily with a more formal introduction. And Jeff, again, welcome back. We're very happy to see you. And I see on the screen the name of Sunda Kronquist, who is a prospective new member. And
Special
we're
guest.
happy to have you with us. And with that, we will move on. We have a couple of announcements. One main announcement: the 2021 Pageant of the Arts is underway. The students' entries have been submitted and judging has been completed. And you will see here a summary of the top 3 ranked students in each of the 5 categories. So we will be congratulating them, and those names in red, the first place winners, will be nominated to participate in the district finals on April 17th. I want to thank Phil for coordinating with the various uni-high teachers to get all of these submissions. I also want to thank our 11 judges. That has to be the most we've ever had for their participation. And the timing has been so tight this year that both the students and the judges had to turn around very, very quickly. So that is so greatly appreciated. And I'm gonna invite Phil to join in with me at this point. We want to make a special thank you to Ron Leister for his incredible and invaluable technical support. I don't know what we would have done without you, Ron. And to the rest of you, Ron was even making enhancements and corrections at 10 o'clock at night. So I'm just glad you didn't go anywhere this year.
I just want to tag on that. Ron, everything I threw at Ron, he handled with such ease and such amazement. No problems at all. He was just, this would not have happened without you, Ron. So just want to say thank you so much. This was amazing that you helped us pull this together in such an amazing fashion. So thank you. You were awesome.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Amen. Amen to that.
And I just want to mention one more thing. The students really had very little coaching this year because they aren't in class, so they weren't able to consult with their teachers very well. And so everything they did was kind of off the cuff. And they didn't really have a whole lot of feedback from anybody except for maybe their friends and family who live at their house. But so some of the talent, well, it was kind of raw, but you could tell there was talent there. But these kids really did an amazing job, considering the circumstances they're under, and even getting a submission in at all. So, so I just want to shout out to the students, and again, Ron, thank you.
That's great, Phil, and thank you. This year, there were more teachers involved and there was a lot more coordinating to do. So I thank you as well. And I'm impressed that these kids put themselves out there to create these works at a time when, as Phil said, they're at home alone and they're not getting much coaching. So it's really a blessing. And now I'd like to invite Aaron to give us an update about his work with the Bandini Foundation and the VA.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. And as they say, Ron Leister, cool as the other side of the pillow. I had to throw that in today. So as Nancy just mentioned, so I'm your new, fairly new community service chair, and following in the legacy of Jim Meyer and many others that may have held this post before in our club. So honored to serve you all in this capacity. So of course, my job is to work with our board and some of our members to select a project for the year. And in talking with folks on our board, we decided to help the Bandini Foundation, and specifically some of the veterans that are up there on the VA campus close by to our neighborhood. You guys may remember Bruce Rosen came and spoke to our club a few months ago and kind of shared some of the history and the background, and really a fascinating history that's really right next door to us. And had a chance to talk it over with our board a little bit. And, given where we're at in our history, and, some of our veterans really need help. There's just so many of them that are right in our community, given the location of the VA, and homelessness and shelter really being an issue in our community that's been highlighted by the pandemic in the last year. So right now, the area consists of, actually, he mentioned a few different projects that are kind of taken off right now. Since the pandemic, there's been some funding available, and there's some things that they're trying to get done on the campus there to really help serve veterans. We had a meeting with our board, the club, and we kind of honed in on one specific project that we thought we could help with, and that's with helping to complete the installation of a rec center there on the Bandini Foundation's managed property on the VA campus. We felt like this will be something that's right in our wheelhouse. It's fairly easy to fund and complete. There may be some volunteer opportunities and some hands-on work for us as we need and feel interested. So I think that's something we felt like we could take and run with. Right now, the area up there, if you haven't seen it, it consists of a golf course that's been up there for a number of years, and really that's kind of the backbone of the recreational facility on the campus there. That's what draws the traffic to the VA campus. Just in the last year that they were able to serve the public in an in-person capacity, there was over 25,000 golf rounds, and half of those are veterans. And veterans, of course, can play golf up there at no cost. So we felt like the next step to, kind of building out a rec center there is supplementing that golf course with, different recreational opportunities that can be there. We talked about bocce ball and horseshoes and cornhole. I'm just going through a little list here. Ping pong and chess boards, basketball, a fitness area, kind of a walking and exercise course. So really turning that into a kind of the quintessential recreation facility for veterans in our area. There's really a drive to push veterans to the campus there, because once we know they're on campus and they can have a caring adult or a possibility for a job and volunteer work, that they're, able to either get back on their feet or help reach their potential so they can support their families and so on. So our fairly early commitment as a club is to come up with $10,000 to help get some of the things that are needed to get get that recreation center going. We've already budgeted $5,000 out of our community service budget for this year. So we've kind of been brainstorming as a board, and some of us that have kind of been helping me out in an ad hoc committee of thinking about ways that we can come up with the rest. We've had a couple meetings with other Rotary clubs. We have some more that we're kind of talking about getting at the district level, and doing some of those things to help brainstorm some different ideas. But I think really when folks have heard about it, they've said, you know, how can I help? So we're kind of excited to get this off the ground. I have a few pictures of what the rec center looks like now. I don't know, Nancy, if there's a way to share with you guys while everybody's here.
Yes, I will. You should be able to anyway, but I'll tell you what, I will quickly make you a co-host so that you can. Oh, there you go. That's working. Okay.
All right, great. I just did it, so it popped up. So this is what it looks like now. They were fortunate enough to have a building largely funded by the Annenberg Foundation. We've all heard of them, and really, you know, this is what the property looks like. So this is kind of the building where they look to kind of be a central hub for recreational activities up there. And then of course it sits right on the golf course. So it has to be, you know, it's a nice segue from golf activities to other recreational activities. I mentioned the golf course a lot just because of the way, you know, that's serving veterans. It works as a jobs hub. So the Bandini Foundation will employ veterans, a lot of whom are homeless on the golf course there. And then they have connections with local country clubs to help get secure people permanent employment. So it's really kind of a cool process. Once we can get folks to the campus and working, then they really wrap their arms around them and help them reach their full potential. This is kind of what it looks like indoors. And again, we're looking to, you know, to build this out a little bit with additional equipment and more, you know, more amenities for the folks there. And then a ton of opportunity as it is here in a lot of places for outdoors. So, you know, we know that a lot of activities will take place like our horseshoes and bocce ball and different things. So really, we see a ton of opportunity there. You know, I'll just kind of end with, you know, if anyone's interested in, you know, in helping out or, you know, or helping me out or just being a part of the project or just, you know, or volunteering or, you know, in any capacity, please reach out to me or reach out to Nancy directly or Diane or Tom have been kind of helping me a little bit with this as well. So thanks for that little bit of time today, guys. And we're hoping to make the neighborhood better and add value to our what our veterans experience in our local community.
Thanks, Aaron. That's such a great cause.
May I make a comment?
Yes.
As a result of Bruce speaking to Rotary, we got in contact with them. My son was talking to him about doing his Eagle project. And my son's Eagle project is going to be doing, it's ambitious, doing a bocce ball court at the Heroes Golf Course. So,
oh, fantastic.
We plan to maybe ask for some materials, but with COVID and everything, my son has been kind of inertia at rest. But that's slowly getting going.
That's great,
to
Brian.
be continued.
Many hands
To
make
be
light
con-
work.
Yeah. To be continued.
And Aaron, I know the facility, so if I can help with anything, please let me know. It's a great cause.
Fantastic. I think a lot of us will want to pitch in. We've already had a Zoom session with one other club that is potentially interested in partnering with us, and we will talk to more. And so I had told Aaron that our district governor will hold her next meeting with the club presidents at the beginning of April, and I'm going to present the concept there to invite a larger number of local clubs to participate with us. So to be continued, but I think it's a very exciting and important project. Thank you, Aaron.
May I add a minute's worth, please, President Nancy?
Yes.
Music Men's Minds has had a band of heroes in the Home for Heroes for several years. We're dark now. I would be very interested in bringing Music Men's Minds and our club with a musical band rehearsal weekly. We have about 30 musical instruments in storage on campus as I speak, and I would be thrilled to have a second musical group at the VA under our umbrella.
That sounds great, Carol. Thank you.
That's very interesting idea. And while I think of it while Carol reminds me, I sent a few of you an article that I came across that was based on a study that was done in Helsinki about the benefits that they have discovered of music in helping and healing people with similar disorders and conditions. So it was extra confirmation. And Carol, after we had that conversation with Khalil Sabah, the music teacher at Uni High, I sent him the article too. And so I think that you're onto something huge here. So wonderful. Okay, Gordon, I want to thank you for serving as our scribe for today's meeting. And next, I would like to invite Tom Barron to introduce our speaker. And we're very happy that you were able to join us, Tom Pickering. Tom Barron, are you there?
I will introduce him.
Thank you.
Look, I'm here. Tom, I hope he's unmuted by now, but anyway, glad he could make it. I thought we had some technical difficulties, but you're appearing on the screen, so welcome. It is indeed my pleasure to introduce my longtime friend, Tom Pickering. I first met Tom when I was working with his wife, Chris, while I'm flying kites. And she's there in the background holding a cup of coffee, as you can see in the picture. I knew immediately he was a man of words, knowledge, and funny stories. As you might see in the background, he has a number of books there, as I do, but the difference is he's read them all, I'm sure. He introduced me to things Irish, more specifically Thomas Cahill's book, How the Irish Saved Civilization, which is right here. He understands the complexity of the Irish people and the civilization when St. Patrick first appeared on the scene in the 4th century. Tom obtained his English degree and master's degree in English-Irish literature, both from UCLA. So what do you do with an advanced degree in Irish literature? Of course, you get a job in facilities management for Procter & Gamble in Cincinnati. But having been raised in Southern California, he soon returned to LA and pursued a career in facility design and construction, which eventually included the responsibility for developing hotels in the far Pacific for Continental Airlines. He was then recruited by Hirsch Bedner Associates, the world's largest hospitality design firm, as executive vice president. After 5 years, he took a leave of absence to hike through Canada and visited pubs throughout Ireland. After running out of money, Tom returned to Hirsch Bedner for several years, till he took a position as corporate vice president of interior design for Beckett Associates, a large international architectural design firm, where he managed projects including the Great Wall Hotel project in China. He was at Beckett for 4 years until he met a man on a plane flight who offered him a job where, as Tom puts it, he could stay home, wear shorts, and go surfing every day. Thus began his freelance copywriting and editing career, and to this day, a man of words and stories, but mostly on paper. On a personal note, Tom has 2 grown sons and 3 granddaughters. He and Chris have now retired to Napa Valley and walk among the vineyards each morning. When I was trying to think of an Irish theme for today's meeting, I remembered those trying times in the 4th century as described in Cahill's book. I know that March 17th celebrates the death of St. Patrick, but he spoke Latin. Why was that? And where did he come from? He converted the Irish to Christianity, but what was the civilization during those times? Who was in charge? I then thought of the one person who could tell us about the Irish history and relate this wonderful story of how the Irish saved civilization. So I will turn the program over to my good friend, Tom Pickering. Tom, you're up. You're on mute. Tom, you're on mute still. There you go.
We can hear you now.
We can hear you.
Good. Well, that's good. We almost didn't make it this morning because living in the sticks up here in Napa Valley, things closed, but it reopened again, and it's currently raining. So anyhow, everything Tom says is pretty much true. Pretty much. Anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about Cahill and his book. So I want to make this a little bit more than a book report, having done enough of those. To start with, the book, How the Irish Saved Civilization, is very funny, well written. It's informative. He uses a lot of current things and some not so current things to describe them. He discusses, among other things, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, Norman Vincent Peale, things like that. And he manages, because he's a good Irish Catholic, to even get in a good couple of chip shots at the Episcopalians. Anyway, if you are a bit of a lazy reader, or you're not much of a reader, I'm going to make a suggestion that you pick up the book on audiobooks. It's read by Liam Neeson. And one of the reasons to do that is you'll understand all the names that you couldn't possibly pronounce unless you studied Irish. So the spelling is nothing like it. And you could do that, or you can listen to me for a little while. Ireland was a tiny little place during the 4th and 5th century, and nothing happened there. They didn't have any tall trees. They didn't sail anywhere. They just stayed there, and things came, and people came, and they conquered them, and they did things. And the rest of Europe was basically run by a thing called Pax Roman, which were the Romans and the Catholic Church. And they were pretty much kind of in the catbird seat for a long time. And then suddenly, not so suddenly, in the 5th century, things started to fall apart for them. First of all, the Germans, who were up north, the Germans needed land. And by that time, the Romans were into design, all kinds of other things. They were into getting into bizarre little pieces of Latin civilization. And they didn't pay much attention. So what happened is, by about 476, when the last Roman emperor was kicked off his throne, that was the beginning of the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages occurred because nobody really knew anything, and nobody could very much read it or understand it. Over here was Ireland. Ireland was sitting out there, having been overrun by the Celts, if you're from Boston, or the Celts, if you're not. The Irish, they just kind of were there. And Patrick, who was one not born in Ireland, Patrick was born in England, actually Wales, I think. And he was captured as a slave. He was brought over to Ireland, and he worked as a slave for 6 years. And then he escaped. And when he escaped, unexplicably showed up again in Ireland 15 years later. He went back to England, then he went to France, where he learned how to read Latin and so forth and so on, and learned a little bit about the church. And he came back and said, now I'm going to go back to Ireland. So he did. He went back to Ireland, and in a word or two, he taught them to read and write, and more importantly, he taught them to copy. So you had this place which had then no cities, had just little kind of missions, and it was part of the greening of Ireland, in that they went from the red martyrdom, which were the Irish who would go off and kill people and kind of a little bit wild, and they would wear the heads of the people that they had, the people that they had offed. They would wear them tied to their waist to show how many. And he went over there, and the first thing he did was he said, okay, we're getting rid of slavery. Now you can appreciate this, since he was a slave for 6 years. And he said, no more slavery. And amazingly, they went along with that. And things started to get a little better. And then he taught people to read and write. Things continued to get better. And then he taught people to appreciate women. Amazingly, there are 3 patron saints of Ireland, one of which is Patrick, one of which is a woman by the name of Bridget of Kildare, and the other of which is a fellow. This is why you need to have Liam Neeson read it. It's called Columchill, and it's spelled nothing like that. So anyway, Patrick started up these little missions, and he started to expand this whole thing about Christianity. Well, by this time, the Romans had pretty much forgotten about Christianity. And he started the Christianity movement, and he had really some interesting followers. Bridget, for example, was made a patron. Oh, by the way, the Roman Church has never to this day made him a saint.
Oh.
He's a patron saint. The Irish consider him a saint, but no. Bridget, same thing. Bridget, supposedly, her big thing was that she could turn water into beer. And then beyond that, Thomas Cahill, he did the real work. He set up 60 missions in 60 places, starting with Scotland, and then ultimately going across the bay into Europe. And he even got as far as the Soviet Union. So what we had here was, we have a situation whereby Ireland, this tiny little place with no real history, was killing it. They were doing everything right. What?
Getting educated.
Well, they were getting educated. That's true. But by the way, I'm having this for everybody. It is raining up here. So when the Irish followed Patrick, they got well. They got a lot of recognition. And pretty soon people from Europe started coming over. And the people from Europe came over and needed a place to learn. So what they would do is they went from the red martyrdom to the green martyrdom. Green martyrdom, they set up little places where they would have a church, they would have a little farming community, they were a place where they could prepare food, so forth and so on. And they did that. And that was the green martyrdom, which made it straight through until the white martyrdom. White martyrdom, they called it white, it was basically colorless martyrdom, where the people there said, well, okay, what do we do with all this? So they created certain things. A couple of things that they created was, for Patrick, confession, if anybody's ever been to confession, they know you sit down with a priest and that's it. Before then, you used to have to stand up before the whole community, explain what your confession was, and be embarrassed in front of everybody. He said, no, your confession should be between you and God and the priest. So they made it just a little private thing. Well, that was pretty good. Another thing that was kind of good was when the Bishop of Rome kind of fell apart, there are all these bishops with not a lot to do. And so they kind of said, well, we'll work for this guy, he's a prince, this guy, he's a prince, whatever. And they worked for the princes and they became pretty corrupt. You wanted something, you paid the bishop whispered in the prince's ear, it was done. So that was not real good. Anyway, after Bridget saved the people, after Thomas Cahill saved the people, we have this thing where Cahill says, and this is how he puts it, he says, wherever they went, the British brought with them books. Not many had seen in Europe books. And they tied to their waist the books the way they used to tie the skulls. And then the love of learning and copying, mostly copying, they copied all the old books. They reestablished literature. Literature was the beginning of Christianity again. And that is how the Irish saved civilization. And that's the basic point. Okay, I'll take questions. Questions? No questions?
When you say, you never mentioned where Patrick came from, though. I was wondering where he was born.
He was born in Wales. And he was born there and he was captured. He went back to Wales and he went to France to learn a little something. And then he came back from France because by that time, France was being overrun. It was part of Gaul. And Gaul was a thing that was not very conducive to Christianity. Any other questions? Yes. Unmute.
Somebody's got unmute.
Unmute.
You're on mute, Michael.
What? I'm sorry, I missed that.
What, if any, education did he receive, or what influenced his thinking about the different martyrdoms and the society that he created over that time?
Well, the red martyrdom was basically the Celts came down and they sort of wiped everybody out. And then the green martyrdom started with Thomas Cahill, who went out and he tried to follow Patrick. Patrick really was pretty ignorant when he was a slave. He was a slave as a young man, as a teenager. And then he went to France and he learned to read and write. So when he came back, he could read and write in Latin, and he spoke Latin. And he also spoke what probably was Welsh or Welsh/English. And he was able to talk to people in Ireland because based on the 6 years he was in Ireland, he could speak Irish.
Thank you.
What?
He didn't chase the snakes out.
Oh, by the way, this is from my wife. There were never any snakes in Ireland. Never any snakes. He didn't get rid of the snakes. Ireland was this tiny little island, which in those days was so far north that snakes being cold-blooded could not exist. So he didn't do that. And he also, alas, did not take the shamrock and make it into the Holy Trinity.
Who's in charge of the whole region around Europe just before? Is that just before the Dark Ages came upon us? And who controlled the area?
Well, who controlled the area was the north of it, the Gaul, was it the Germans and just the people they would pick up along the way. Italy controlled basically the Mediterranean and that whole area. And then the Jews and the Palestinians controlled that particular area.
How about the Vikings?
Vikings loved it during that time. The Vikings, first of all, the Vikings loved Patrick too. Vikings came down, and under Patrick, they were able to capture a lot of people, turn them into slaves, and the Vikings actually were the ones responsible for building cities. The Vikings built Dublin, Limerick, places like that. And before then, the Vikings they wanted land, they got land to feed themselves. There wasn't much in Ireland though. I mean, the Irish lived on fish, essentially.
Tom Cahill's book, he reserves it to the end to talk about the copying and editing or whatever it is like that. I guess all the other manuscripts were destroyed. He had, when the Irish copied all that information and literature, they're the ones responsible for how they saved it, right? Could you expand on that a little bit?
That's right. The Irish did copy whatever they could. And they sent people over to, even to Rome, but they sent them over there and they would capture whatever they could, because at the end of the Renaissance period, or the end of the period before the Dark Ages, the Irish were pretty bad too. I mean, Patrick came and he got them interested in literature and so forth and so on. But, you know, there were still some things that Patrick left undone. Let's take Irish and women. Up to and including Patrick's time, the Irish every year would have a woman. They would take the woman, kind of treat her as a wife or a slave or something like that. And then at the end of a year, she had the option of going, they had the option of letting her go, or they could continue on. But with regard to the literature, the Irish had maybe 50 or 60 priests that could read and write. And then when Patrick came over, they started to get more and more and more. So that by the time that Patrick had converted them and had taught them to read and write and copy books, and by the way, the Irish couldn't help but adding their 2 cents every time they read something. So they read, so-and-so did such and such, and they go, well, it doesn't really make sense. I'll change it a little bit. So I'm sure I don't offend anybody when I say the biblical stuff got changed considerably during the time of Patrick.
What about the Book of Chaos? Where does that fit in?
Book of Kells, I just had asked here. Book of Kells came before Patrick. And it was when the Vikings came over, when some of the others came over from Gaul, they came and these people hid everything they could. So they hid these beautiful breastplates, they had goblets, they did everything. Book of Kells was found buried. So. Any other questions?
I
have more of a comment than a question. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Nancy.
Oh, I was just going to make an observation that, first of all, this is fascinating, and thank you for being here. And as someone who is of Irish descent, I'm embarrassed that I've never read this book, although I have meant to for a long time. So
read it.
So I will absolutely read it, and I feel even more motivated to do so. I'm intrigued by the fact that his work was so profound, not only in his involvement in preserving books, but you said he founded 60 missions across a great span of Europe, and sounds like Eastern Europe if he got into where Russia now is. And so I'm puzzled by how this is a festive holiday. I mean, this is not a lighthearted man. He accomplished great things in his life.
He did do great things, and apparently the Irish liked him because, one, he was big and strong. This counts for something. He couldn't be intimidated. The other thing is, he was somebody who obviously came from the slave ranks. And so he spoke to them in Irish, or he spoke to them in Welsh or English or Latin. And they said, oh, this guy's great, he's got it. So what they did is they spread out. Colin Cahill was responsible for 60 missions that he built all over Europe. And basically, as he says, that any literature that was the literature of a nation, this is the first literature of a nation that was at all existent in Europe after the fall of Rome. During the Dark Ages, there was nothing much that came out of Rome. It's some good pasta, things like that, but,
I will just add one other. Oh, I'm sorry, Tom. Just one quick thing, and I'll turn it over to you. I apologize, but I thought I heard you say, Tom Pickering, that is, that he educated the Irish about, I want to say, the value of women.
Yes, he did.
And no, I've never heard that before. Now I'm ready to wear green on St. Patrick's Day. I told some of our members earlier that my family is of Northern Irish Protestant descent. And even though they had come over to this country in the mid 1700s, when I was in school and we would celebrate St. Patrick's Day, I was not allowed to wear green.
Whoa.
Could you wear orange?
Did you
Yeah,
get-
my parents said if I was going to wear any color, it would have to be orange. And I was mystified, and I said, but we've been here for 200 years. Who cares anymore? But, you know, it reminds you that national and ethnic loyalties run deep.
They do.
They do. Anyway, I'm sorry, Tom Barron, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I took a course in the Plato Society, or I gave a course actually on the Northern Irish and Southern Irish, and why there was so much hostility and of that. And it was because I came down to the conclusion that I've never seen a war between when they had the same faith, Christianity, the same color, you know, white, etc., like that. There's never been an ethnic war between the two, between the North and the South, as in Ireland. And why is that? And it was because of the treatment of the Southern Ireland came about, because the North treated the South as slaves, basically. I mean, they didn't give many of the features of centralized government would give them, and they treated them poorly. And to that day, it was, and that was during years ago, but that's why it occurred in the early 20th century, was the fact that the Southern Irish never forgot their treatment they received during the number of years they were under the control of the Northern Ireland. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I want to interject that I'm sure the two of us is from our little favorite pub down in Oakland called Slancha. And the woman there, you cannot order a black and tan, which is half Guinness and half Hart, because it portrays that black and tan and the invasion of the Northern Ireland stuff. So you have to call it a half and half.
Hi, Chris. I haven't seen Tom and Chris for years. That's why.
Like the
Well, we can't forget the role of the British. I mean, the British used Northern Ireland to control Southern Ireland, which wanted independence from Britain.
Yes.
That's a factor that we can't ignore.
Right. And the Northern Irish were, of course, for years, and still are, connected with the English.
Yeah.
And the Southern Irish, they got tired of it somewhere along the way, and they just kind of stopped. But, you know, I'll tell you, they both throw good parties.
Absolutely.
If I might interject one other story about Tom and Chris. They always threw a party on the championship night with the NCAA tournament. And that was the Final Four, you know, the Final Two. And we were at their house on the night that UCLA won their last championship in 1995. And the noise was so loud, and it was such a festive occasion. I never heard the announcers. They had the game the whole time, but UCLA obviously won, and it was an evening to remember.
That was.
Are we all going this year?
Well, I don't know. I entered Tom's pool, and I did not pick the Bruins.
I noticed it.
I want to say one thing about that evening too, is we had a Rottweiler named Guinness because she was black and tan and stout. And when that noise went off in the room, she came walking out of the bedroom and like stood there and looked at all of us like, can you keep it down in here? And then went back to the bedroom.
Oh, great.
It was quite an evening.
Well, hopefully that will be happening again before long, before we know it.
Hopefully.
So interesting. And, you know, it reminds me what Tom Pickering, that is, your very interesting depiction of this part of the history of Ireland and of Patrick reminds me that we are often raised with very distorted images of historical events. And this is so different than I would have imagined.
This is absolutely true. And Patrick, of course, was called Patrick, but that's okay. Anyway, Patrick Patrick had an unusual background in that he was in Ireland, then he went to England, then he went to France, he went back to Ireland. So he was a little bit more well-rounded, if you will, and a little bit more worldly. And he was a big guy, and everybody just kind of gave him space.
But if he spoke 3 languages, he was a smart guy. He must have
He was
been
smart.
very intelligent.
He was smart, and when Patrick died, you know that Patrick is part of the green martyrdom. Patrick used to sleep outside every night. Slept in rocks and in caves.
The paper trail that you are leaving behind.
But he
in
would.
terms of a GPS, if you will, for being able to find all the information.
Bill, go on mute, will you?
He's muted now.
Anyway,
Sorry.
he would sleep with his head on a rock. And the night he died, he went home, put his head on a rock. That was it. He died at, they think, 76.
Age?
Yeah, it's pretty old for those guys.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. Do we have any more questions, comments? Tom, I want to thank you for a fascinating talk. And I'm so glad that it worked out that you could join us visually.
Oh my.
I mean, it would have been fine to call in, but it's enjoyable to see you, especially enjoyable to see you. And on behalf of the club, again, I want to thank you for your fascinating talk and for giving us your time. And as a token of appreciation, we will be making a donation in your name to the Westwood branch of the Los Angeles Public Library.
That's great.
So thank you for being here again. And to our members, we will meet again next week, March 25th, for a club assembly. And in the meantime, I hope that everyone has a